Who here already understands about ontologies or is in library science? Okay, some, but not all. Okay, so I'm going to give you the super condensed version. So when I gloss over things, know that I'm doing it because I'm giving the super short version. So as Margie mentioned, there's an increasing interest in ontologies in the semantic space. People ask us about ontologies. Can you build me an ontology? Does your software support ontologies? Do I need an ontology? Most often it seems like when they come to us, someone told them about it, or their boss told them, or they watched a webinar and all of a sudden they need one and they may or may not. So in any event, we're developing a tool which is a companion or actually sort of an offshoot of the source master called Ontology Master. And I'm going to give you, it's still in development. I'm going to give you a look at some of the things we're working at and what they might look like when they're done and why we're doing it. So what is an ontology? In the language of knowledge management, it's a cousin of a thesaurus, but it has more detailed relationships. So instead of just broader and narrower terms, it has more concretely defined terms. Instead of just saying dog is a narrower term of animals, you might say a dog is a subclass of the class animals. And you might say that a particular dog is an example of a breed of dogs. Also, and I think maybe more importantly, the associative relationships, that is what we call related terms, are defined more specifically. So instead of saying that term A is related to term B, the example I always like to use is dogs and dog food. Whenever you deal with subject matter experts, they want to put dog food in the dog branch because that's where they think people will look for it. But of course, dog food is not a type of dog or a part of a dog. So we say that's a related term. Well, in an ontology, you can say that a dog eats dog food is eaten by dog. So the relationships are a little bit more specified. I'll get into that a tiny bit more in a minute. Like thesauri and other taxonomies, there are international standards for ontology construction. I won't bother to read them all off here. Common logic, RDF frameworks, and in addition to OWL, SCOS is actually an information or knowledge storage format that supports ontological relationships. So what is an ontology versus a thesaurus? As I sort of said, in a thesaurus you will have broader terms. In an ontology you will have specific kinds of broader terms. Narrower terms, you can say, it doesn't just have narrower terms, it has parts, it has members, so that under your category dogs, dog anatomy and dog breeds aren't exactly as intertwined in the same way they are in a thesaurus. And related terms can be more specifically defined as uses, eats, causes, or anything else that you want to do. It's very flexible. You can adapt the sorts of broader, narrower terms and associative terms to whatever your needs are. They're not a set number of them, and that's all you can use. As long as you define it in your framework, you can make them mean anything that you need to. They both have the same kinds of synonyms. Our software supports all kinds of synonyms. You most often, because we're doing auto-indexing, we put all the synonyms in a field, whether that's an abbreviation, an acronym, the British spelling, a common misspelling. Those all go in the non-preferred terms field. But in Thesaurus Master, you can actually put a different field for British spelling and a different field for abbreviations. They'll function the same, but you can sort those out. In an ontology, you can do the same thing. You can define your non-preferred terms in any ways that you like. Aha, my formatting issues are getting back to me. But so, for example, in an ontology, you might say that a cancer is a class of disease, and that cancer has a subclass of skin cancer. That skin cancer is reciprocally a subclass of cancer. And so those are all examples of broader, narrower terms, but more specifically defined in an ontology. As far as related terms, you could say that skin cancer is caused by UV rays, whereas UV rays causes, you get a little lost with singulars and plurals, but cause skin cancer. So that's it's important to understand that all associative relationships are always reciprocal in an ontology. They're just not just relation, it's cause is caused by. Whereas chemotherapy treats skin cancer is treated by chemotherapy, and so forth. Yes, they're customized and definable, and they're all reciprocal. So how do you use an ontology? Well, for our purposes in this industry, you would use it in much the same way that you use your thesaurus. You would, using an associated rule base, use a set of terms to scan your document and assign subject terms to a document that describe the aboutness of the document. So for practical purposes, it's just a controlled vocabulary. It's not just a controlled vocabulary. It does have the ability to link out to other data sources, and this is the semantic web aspect that people are promoting. But as far as our tool is concerned, MAI will basically work the same, classification, search, retrieval. It's the relationships between the concepts that are enhanced, not the way our tool will use the words to try and understand your content. So do you need an ontology or do you need a thesaurus? Well, I think it depends. A thesaurus is great for organizing concepts in a domain or topic area, and it's also great for classifying documents the way we're all doing it now, and most other needs that are used in publishing. Why would you need an ontology? If you have a very complicated relationship, if you have a very complicated set of things with complicated relationships that you want to keep defined, you might want to consider an ontology. For example, there's a well-known vocabulary called CABI. That is an agricultural and biological ontology, and it has plants and regions and diseases and organisms, and so they don't just have broader and narrower terms and related terms. They say this disease occurs in this area, this disease affects this plant, this organism causes this disease, and so they have a more complicated chain of relationships defined in their vocabulary. Manufacturing is an example Jay likes to use. If you are building rocket ships, well, okay, if you're building jet airplanes, you might have a part. The part is used on an airplane. That airplane is manufactured by this company. The part is manufactured by this company. The part interacts with this other part, which is manufactured by this company. The part uses a lubricant, which is also manufactured by another company. And so that's a web of relationships that might be more useful to describe with an ontology than just a thesaurus if you want to try and maintain those specific connections. So for example, this is a quick diagram I threw up of the sort of thing I was talking about. You can see that just a granular hierarchical set of terms wouldn't be as useful to try and characterize the relationship between these things. Suppliers, manufacturers, parts. You can even say viscosity of the fluid used. I see things in ontologies where things have color. Stop sign has color red. I'm like, I don't know how that's useful, but you have the freedom to do all those kinds of things. Ontologies sound cool. Yeah, they're pretty cool. Do you need one? Maybe. Maybe not. The downside is that it's extremely labor intensive to build an ontology. Much more labor intensive than it is to build a thesaurus. Instead of just putting things in a branch, you have to define every broader, narrower term relationship. You have to define every associative relationship that you want in the vocabulary. And further, if that relationship that you want to define doesn't already exist, you have to go back to your schema, add that relationship and its reciprocal, and make sure it's applied throughout your whole thing. So it is time consuming to build them. So projects are longer. It takes more manpower. People always want to know if you can automate it. Can I automate that? Can I just dump it into Triple Store? Yeah, but it's not going to have the deep relationships that you're really looking for. So it takes a lot of human curation and review. Again, just like a thesaurus, on the front end. The benefits are reaped on the back end. And they also require intensive expert review. So you're not just going to have a SME come in and look at a hierarchical view of your thesaurus and see what terms are missing. They're going to look at every relationship. Oh, this organism causes this disease in this plant. What about this organism? That also does that. And so it is very complicated. But they are cool. So why am I telling you about ontologies in the first place? Well, as I said, there's a lot of interest in this space about ontologies. We get asked about it a lot. And so we're developing a tool to manage ontologies, specifically dedicated to manage ontologies. That's going to be a cousin of Thesaurus Master. And essentially it uses the same framework as Thesaurus Master, but it's going to have ways where you can define those relationships that you need and set words into them and then move them around and have automatic reciprocation in the same easy way that we've come to expect in other data harmony tools. So, this is the familiar admin module from Thesaurus Master, where you can set the reciprocal fields, the equivalent fields, the text fields, and a few other buttons. So based on this design, we're going to design an admin module for Ontology Master, where you can define all the relationships you need. What I left out here was which ones are broader, narrower, and which ones are associative. But you can say an is a relationship. A dog is an animal. Animals have member dog, or have class dog, has subclass. Causal relationships, whole part relationships, use relationships, like a fluid that I was talking about. Also equivalences, of course, you can determine in the same way if you want to have separate fields for your non-preferred terms. And then it will have the same ability to have simple text fields or pop-up boxes the exact same way as the Source Master. You saw in Kirk's Triumph Learning presentation, there are like 10 or 12 boxes at the bottom of the term record where they had things mapped to other vocabularies. All that will remain the same. And again, this is a projection of what the term record will look like, or something very much like this. Again, we're still in development. So it looks very much like the term record in the Source Master, only things are more specifically defined. So instead of term, broader, narrow, or associative, there will be several kinds of broader terms. There will be several kinds of narrower terms, several kinds of associative terms. So here I chose oratorios, which is a subclass of vocal music, an example of narrative music. It has a subclass, sacred oratorios, and so forth. These are associative relationships, which I just invented, and a few other language things. And then, of course, you'll have the normal buttons at the bottom that you can customize and put anything you want in them. So the tricky bit is, in Thesaurus Master, we have a very common sense and intuitive way to navigate the hierarchy. It looks just like a file menu, right? You click a button, it unfurls the row below it. You click it again, it furls back up. Well, ontology isn't just strictly hierarchical. It has all these nodes that are related to each other. So one of the challenges that we're still dealing with is how to display the ontology to the user in a way that is easy to use, in a way that does not just destroy your memory space, so that if 4 or 5 or 10 people are working on the same project, you're going to crash your server, in a way that is easy to display in a space perspective. In Thesaurus Master, as you know, the term record is over here and the hierarchy tree is over here, so we need something that you can navigate, either flip back and forth between or see both on the same screen. So we're still working out how we're going to do that, but I threw up a couple examples that I pulled off of the web, of things that we're looking at, and you can sort of see why they may or may not be good choices, and it's a direction we're moving in. This is from profuse.org. Obviously, this looks pretty, but it's probably not super practical. And this came out blurrier than I thought it would after I blew it up, but this is closer, right? You can see, and this is from a SCOS model from Pool Party, how they are pointing out all the things, but this isn't condensed. This almost shows you the entire term record in the ontology display. We don't need to see the entire term record. The term record is going to be on the other side of the screen. So this is the right idea, where the nodes are easy to navigate. Pool Party also has another one that Jack showed me where they color code things depending on it. So it almost looks like a file menu, but things are color coded according to the kind of relationship they have. So something like this might be more useful, and I think this is sort of the direction we're going in. Again, I pulled this from Profuse, and I think you would have to be able to zoom in and out depending on the level of granularity you wanted to see, and maybe it would show more detail as you got closer to a node and less as you zoomed away. And then this is a very simple, just word-based semantic one, which I thought was actually kind of a funny example because it's vague or ambiguous, as we would say, but that still leaves a little bit to be desired. What are these numbers doing? Are these definition numbers? And so we're still navigating what the ontology view is going to look like. But I thought I would put some examples up of the kinds of things that we're considering for that piece of it. So the bottom line is that this is a sneak peek. We're still in development. We are projecting release this year. We have some building to do. We have some testing to do. The idea is that MAI won't change. MAI will work the same. You will feed it terms from your ontology, just like you feed it terms from your thesaurus. Then you can build rules if necessary. They'll be automatically applied to your document using the same familiar NLP engine that we use now. It's just the term sources will be different. And we're happy to talk about it. But that's what I have for now.